So you don't want to go and buy the wrong cables, the wrong router. You don't want to do the wrong thing on 4 different stores and have that cost multiply. Like if you're going to make a mistake, make it in one and then
make it quick. Yeah, absolutely.
Extend it out, right?
Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Vision, driven by Autobody News. I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. Today, I'm joined by Sebastian Torres, a super sharp family business operator leading CARSTAR Torcam Group out of Canada. When Sebastian dove into the family business, he challenged some legacy habits and really leaned into technology, adding some great tools by Solera and others so customers can leave with an estimate in hand. The result? Faster intake, cleaner repair plans, better documentation, and a noticeable lift in profitability. We'll unpack the workflow changes at the front counter, the ROI behind instant estimates, and most importantly, perhaps, the leadership side, how to build the foundation for growth and know when the timing is right to scale and grow via additional locations. Let's dive in. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Thank you so much for having me, Cole. Pretty excited.
Looking forward to an awesome conversation, at least in our kind of pre-hitting recording conversation. We have a lot of fun stuff to talk about, some similarities in our background and upbringing. But before we dive into that, would love to hear your story leading up to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a second generation owner. I actually started in my dad's shop. So, we started kind of going through all the different departments. Started in detail, moved over to the prep side. Then I did a little bit of body work, not too much. I can't call myself a licensed technician by any means. That would disrespect my guys. But good background though. And then once I moved over to the parts department, I just started making my way through every facet of the shop. So learned how to manage the parts, then moved on to estimating. I would say estimating is actually my forte. That's where I spent the most amount of time in. And from there, I took it to office management and then production management up until where I am today.
There we go. Awesome background, great foundation, and a great segue into talk to us about where CARSTAR Torcam Group is today.
Yeah, so to talk about the group itself, it actually started with my dad and my mom. That's where the second generation comes in. My dad actually used to wash cars in the same place that, he ended up purchasing. So dad's been in the industry for over 20 years. I've been around it all my life. 2019, we decided that, maybe we had enough experience to start growing a group and seeing where we can take it. So everybody kind of pooled money together and we were able to purchase the first store, which is 103 Copernicus Boulevard, along with the second. We purchased 2 at once, but the second store wasn't really a store. It was doing very, very little sales, and it was within the same city as well, only 10 minutes away. So we were able to get a very good deal for them. 2019, we started, and we acquired the third location 2021. 2024, we acquired the fourth, and now we're opening up a fifth coming in about 3 months, I would say.
Man, what an awesome growth story and an awesome founding story for the Torcam Group. Talk to me about what exactly that decision-making process looked like when you were ready to expand and become this regional MSO play.
We always kind of had it in the back of our heads that we wanted more stores. It's just we didn't know. We've always been around like the MSO environment. So the group that we used to work with before, my dad was the vice president of operations for that group at one point, and they had around 13 to 14 stores. So we've always been in that environment. It's just, one thing is working in the environment already set up. Another thing is actually getting it done. So when we got the opportunity to do a third location, we said, okay, we feel pretty confident about the 2. So let's go ahead and let's try to open up the third. And that was like a bucket of cold water. It's one of those things where they say it's easier said than done. So great learning experiences. I probably almost lost my whole set of hair during that time, even though I'm only 32.
And it doesn't look it, man. It doesn't look it.
It's lots of vegetables, man. I've grown it back. It was thinning out at one point. But no, I mean, we learned a lot of things, and when we were ready to open up the fourth, I think we were a little bit more well versed on what we had to do. So that became kind of, I would say, the real birth of the Torcam Group happened right before the fourth store, because up until the third, when we were running the third, it was just separate silos. If you walked into one of my stores when we had the three of them, uh, you wouldn't see a similarity between any of them. Everybody was just kind of, running wild, right? So when we had the opportunity at the fourth, that's when we kind of just sat down and I said, we need to standardize this. And obviously, if we want to go to 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever that number is, we need to treat ourselves like a little corporate aside from our corporate, right? And that's kind of what the decisions led to getting to the point we are today.
Awesome. Yeah, I have conversations all the time about, all right, when are we ready to take that next step? When is that foundation strong enough to finally really build upon? And 3 stores is a lot to be running in different silos. What tactically does that involve? Where you were rethinking kind of the way you've always done it to, all right, here's how we're going to do it moving forward. What did that look like? What kind of sparked all that? And how'd you have rubber meet the road?
Yeah, so I think the biggest issue was what I started realizing is I would spend time like 3 to 4 months at each location because one location was always in trouble. So something was on fire at any given time. So I just recall telling my team, saying, okay, for these next 2 or 3 months, we're going to fix Brantford. For these next 2 or 3 months, we're going to fix West. And then by the time West was fixed, Brantford was already on fire again. So I go back to Brantford, and then it's like, oh, Simcoe needs it. So, I just started to realize, like, okay, if I have 4 and 5 stores, this is not sustainable, right? We need to do something that essentially the stores can manage themselves, and we can create like a shared services team that's going to help the stores and help the managers so that they don't feel like they're alone and all they have to do is focus on Karst, right? So that's where we kind of led to the creation of the Torcam Group. We started off with the review desk. So the review desk is the one that will send all the stores will do the files, they'll take care of the estimates, everything like that. And at the end of it, it goes up to the review desk on the group side, and they review all the estimates before final billing. So pictures, any requirements, 3D measuring, alignments, anything you need on an estimate, that review desk takes care of it. And that's really where we started. And from that point on, we did an accounts receivable department, accounts payable department, HR, health and safety department for the group. And right now, the managers and the staff in the shop really just need to worry about fixing cars.
That's what it's all about, fixing cars and fixing them the right way. And it seems like you took a really proactive approach to kind of professionalizing and standardizing. Looking ahead, you hinted at, and I want to double click on some pain points and some real, all right, if you're a customer going from one location to another, what are the differences? And where did you see some of those pain points, whether that was, the front desk experience all the way back to customer experience and communication? What were some of the big differentiators, and what have you really focused on standardizing as one group?
The biggest thing, honestly, is scheduling. It was horrible. It's Brantford was taking in cars tomorrow, and Simcoe was booking them out for 3 months, right? So there was no standardized scheduling program, and on top of that as well, no load leveling program. So, which is one of the things that we kind of looked at and we said, we have 3 locations. Like, why is this not happening? Right.
Yeah. One of the beauties of scale, right?
Yeah. So we really dove into both of those, which is going to be a big part of the conversation today. But
man, you are the master of good segues. I appreciate that. Talk to me about that. Some tech stack stuff. I know Solera came up in some of our pre-show conversations. How did you use technology, and what technology did you use to go ahead and get everybody on the same page?
yeah, so it's funny because if I hadn't spoken to Solera, I was already thinking of making that app myself. But I was in a conference, I believe, I can't remember where it was. I want to say North Carolina. I can't remember the exact location, but Bill Broward did a presentation, and this was a few years back. And me and my father were both at that conference, and we took a look and we said, he was doing the presentation on how their their next step is going to be AI and AI estimating. And at the time, they mentioned that it was going to be a good training tool for the appraisers. And, not knowing much about AI, I've just seen it in the movies. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, right? So my dad nudges me on the side of the arm and he goes, "You need to go up and talk to that guy." And I said, I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." Let's wait until he finishes and let me go up.
Now, when was
And
this roughly, by the way?
this was, I want to say 23, either
Okay.
22 or 23. One of the,
So
one of the two. I want to say
super early innings, like long before any of us were talking about Chat GPT and
Yeah,
AI
no,
was
there was
integrated
none
in
of that,
everything.
man. Like
Yeah.
this seemed like a sci-fi movie when he was up there talking about it. Like it was crazy. So I went up and I introduced myself and I said, "Hi, Bill. My name's Sebastian. This is a great conversation that you're having. How can I get my hands on this?" And at the time, it was just the pilot. And he's like, "Oh, really? You'd like to take a look?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely, I would." So we exchanged cell phone numbers, and from there it took off. It was one simple conversation at a conference. The next thing Bill's setting up meetings with some of the Solera crew. And I would like to mention at the time, which is kind of like silly now that you look back at it, but there was animosity towards the estimating companies. So not one shop would want to work with an estimating companies because there's this wide belief that we're not on the same team, right?
Mm,
So it was kind of very new for anybody to say, okay, why don't we reach out to an estimating company and partner with them, which is really the most logical option, right?
right.
Like, why would you go with a third party when you can go with the one that manages it? So that's how that started.
Awesome. Talk to me about that pilot. We talked again in our pre-show call about kind of trying before it in one location and getting a real sense of, all right, does this make sense? Is this working how we think it's going to work before bringing that out to your broader group? Talk to me about how that went and what exactly that product was doing for you and is doing for you today.
Yeah, so the biggest things that we did was we got in touch with the software team, with the development team, and we said, okay, what do we need here? And it's funny because they didn't really know either. They're like, "This is why we're talking to you, because we got to figure stuff out, right?" So I said, okay, what if we try it on tablets? I had tried tablets before, but my internet was absolutely horrendous. So I said, I think we can give this a shot, because one of my dreams was I want all my employees operating on tablets, right? Like my dad was the guru of Excel spreadsheets and, pen and paper. And I am just a little bit lazier than he is. So I wanted everything automated. So we said, let's give it a shot in tablets. So the one thing that I realized going into it was our internet was still not up to par. So I called my IT coordinator, which also happens to be my father-in-law, and he's a phenomenal IT coordinator. And he went in there and he said, "Okay, let's figure out how we can make this internet better." And the first step was setting up the IT infrastructure so that we could watch a movie out in the back lot. So that's literally what he focused on, was, routing cables, putting up the router, everything that he needed to, until he watched the movie in the back lot. And once that was done, then we were like, okay, we're ready. And that's how the pilot started.
That is awesome. What a great quantitative measure of your ability to execute there is,
Yeah.
can we watch a movie in the back lot? That's fantastic. Now
Yeah.
I want to dive into exactly what these products are doing for you guys, but a couple things before we jump in. Number one, and it might be kind of self-explanatory, but I do want to double click on the fact that when you're implementing new technology, you're trying it in one store before you bring it out to your broader group. Why'd you land on doing it that way?
Uh, we do that for everything. So, like, again, I mentioned my dad started washing cars and my mom started as a CSR in that Brantford location. So, if there's anything that we know better, it's that. Like, we feel extremely comfortable in it. We know the workflow, we know how the location works. So, rather than going to a location that we've just acquired within 3 to 4 years that we don't have that much data in, why not stay at what we call head office, right? So not only that, but when you're trying to, and I feel bad for my Copernicus team, bless those guys, but when we're trying to get a new SOP on board, we got to figure out what the pain points are, right? And we have to go through that uh, hell, I call it, before we can go ahead to the other locations and say, hey guys, listen, we have something pretty good in our hands here that I think we need to start training on, right? So one of the key people in my pilot were Nicola, the operations manager, and Carissa, the office manager, which is now an operations manager at another location. So they were phenomenal, and they essentially used the tablet in any way, shape, or form they could to kind of come up with those things that we needed to streamline, right? So we just, everything that we do, regardless of whether it's IT or production or any SOP, we start it there. On the flip side of that, hardware is expensive. So you don't want to go and buy the wrong cables, the wrong router. You don't want to do the wrong thing on 4 different stores and have that cost multiply. Like if you're going to make a mistake, make it in one, and then,
Make it quick. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
extend it out,
Absolutely.
right?
I love it, man. So you've mentioned your parents, you've mentioned your father-in-law as a fellow second gen family business person, albeit former in my case. Love the family business stories. Who all within your family have you worked with, and who all are you working with today?
We're all in it, man.
I love
And
it.
it's funny because it's us and another family, the Avery family. Shout out to those guys. Every single one of them is working with us as well. So I tell them that they compete with the ownership family. But, my wife runs the review desk. My sister's just starting out in the review desk. My mom's in charge of the finances. My brother-in-law is Nicola. My father-in-law is the IT coordinator. My mother-in-law helps out with the organization and cleaning of the location. So we're all in it.
Dude, that is awesome. You
Yeah.
have me beat. I spent 6 years under one roof working with my dad, my mom, and my wife. You've got me beat in spades, man. That is so cool. When family
Yeah.
business works, it works so well. And nobody more fun to be in the trenches with, no question about it. All right. So I want to walk through this kind of workflow redesign and how you thought about it as you're really playing a role in developing this full pilot program. Walk us through the new intake now. I think that's one thing on your end that was drastically influenced, at least by some of these new products you brought in the door.
So the biggest thing that was actually influenced is not necessarily the intake of the drivable cars, but it's the intake of the non-drive. So we go back to scheduling being a pain point. And, we would always sit down and we would kind of, share ideas, and we'd say, why is scheduling such a pain point? I'm like, why can we not just grab all the cars coming in and put them on a schedule and say, this is what we're going to work on? And then one of my managers goes, yeah, because we get 8 tow-ins in one Monday. I'm like, okay, fair. That's a valid point. So I said, so our pain point isn't scheduling, our pain point is non-drives. And they were like, yes. So when we got the pilot originally, we were thinking about, this is going to be an estimator training tool, or this could potentially be like a cheaper way of hiring an estimator. And pretty quick, we realized that this isn't a replacement for an estimator. This is a tool, right? And as soon as you realize that this is a tool and you still need the human intervention, this is when this tool becomes very, very powerful. So when we started scheduling before we had this tool, we were like, okay, well, we need to write preliminary estimates on this cars, right? So we'd get 7, 8 cars towed in on a Monday. And then we'd have the appraisers running like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to write an estimate that takes really about an hour to an hour and a half, right? Once we had that preliminary estimate, we bring the estimate in only to find out they wrote it 75% correct. So there we were wasting our time at that point. Like, what are you scheduling, right? Once we got this tool, I said, what if we use it as a scheduling tool? And we started running it. So that's where it got really, really cool, because instead of taking an hour and a half, we had an estimate in 10, 15 minutes, right? So then the appraisers would go outside, they'd go with the tech, they'd still need to take their pictures, they'd still need to take their notes, and then they'd come back. By the time they got to their desk, after they had taken the pictures, the estimate was already there. So all they had to do is what we call grooming. So they go ahead and they groom the estimate for, okay, we're at about a 75% confidence. How can we take it to a 95 or at least over 90? That's how we started. So then the estimate would go with their notes, additional pictures, everything like that, and add what they needed to add. And in 20 to 25 minutes, we had that car scheduled. So instead of doing one car in an hour and a half, in an hour and a half, we could potentially do 4 to 5, right? For one estimator, keep that in
Mm.
mind. You know, I
Yeah,
got three.
yeah. No
So
doubt.
like
Zoom out for me real quick. You keep referring to this tool, and I assume this is the outcome of your 2022, 2023 conversation with Bill and his team. Give me the quick spiel and rundown on what exactly this tool from Solera is and is doing for you guys.
So it's the mobile inspection app, and we're using it along with the VI. So the VI is the artificial intelligence. So it's really two different things in one, right? It's two different products. So the mobile inspection app, what that allows us to do is download it on the tablet that I was mentioning earlier. And you go outside and it's a guided picture. So you have access to all of your assignments. You can start an assignment from the tablet, you know, do everything you need to. And then it takes you to the next page where it's guided picture format. So what it is, you know, it'll tell you take a picture of the left front, take a picture of the right front, take, you know, VIN, odometer, all the main pictures, and take some good solid damage pictures. And then once you hit submit, if you have the VI, what the VI does, the visual intelligence, is it creates the estimate for you. And those are the two things that we're using right now to do that.
Man, seems very powerful. And all the talk about AI, there's a lot of fear, at least in the white collar world, a lot less so in the blue collar world of ultimately it's going to be doing jobs for us. I think in the blue collar world, and I'm including collision repair in that sweeping generalization, it's going to make our people a lot more productive is the end outcome. Have you found that to be the case? And kind of on a related note, how did people's roles within the CSR world and the estimator world change with this tool coming into play?
More relaxed.
Hmm.
I did not chop down any staff. I kept the same staff. If anything, they get paid more money now because we're more profitable. But the change was positive all across the board. You know, I always look for ways, especially with my team, to say, okay, how can we do the same job with less work? Again, going back to the little bit of the lazy comment, but you got to work smart, not hard. You know what I
There you
mean? And
go.
that's what I tell everybody. Like, how can we make the same job less stressful? And this did exactly just that. Instead of the estimators having to go outside, take pictures, bring cars in, spend an hour and a half and get stressed out, um, we could potentially just schedule in those non-drives and we know exactly what cars are going to come in that day, right? So instead of writing 7, 8 estimates in a day, we're really only doing like 4 or 5.
Hmm.
Sometimes we do 2, depending on what we need for the budget. You know, like if we have 2 really big hits, team of 3 estimators can take the whole day writing 2 hits.
Sure.
It doesn't matter, right?
No doubt, man. Very, you keep mentioning, you've mentioned twice at least a little bit of laziness. Nobody wants to be a lazy person. However, I will say a little sprinkle of laziness can make some real efficiencies work, right? How do we
I've
work
learned that.
smarter and not harder, to your point?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I've always been like that, and I say that because my parents are going to listen to this. They're going to hit me because I've always mentioned it, but it's true. It comes to the work smart, not hard.
There you go.
If you have 100 processes, how can you chop them down to 50? That's the bottom line.
There we go. Well, we were throwing some numbers out on time assumptions, and I think it merits diving a little bit deeper into. Talk to me about before integrating this tool versus after. How much time savings are you finding? Is there any additional kind of revenue grab that you're getting that could have been missed by more human error in the past? What's the overall kind of quantitative benefit that you've seen in your business?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, it all comes down to that saying, you know, time is money. And the second you understand that, then that's, you know, when everything starts to get better. A lot of people think, you know, we have to put in more cars through or we have to find a way to write more estimates in one day. And you really don't, you know what I mean? Like if you can scale it back and write less estimates, but write them proper, and have a little bit more throughput on the cars on the long run, then that's what's going to give you the money, right? Chopping down the time for the estimators having to write an estimate, means that they can take a little bit longer if they needed to. So if we would take an hour and a half writing a 75% estimate, they could take 45 minutes writing 120% one. You know what I mean? So it goes down to documentation. It goes down to the time to add all of the admin things that we need to add nowadays. Everybody talks about the admin burden. Well, there's tools to mitigate the admin burden nowadays, and you just have to use them.
There you go. Well, another key piece of writing proper estimates is, in theory, it should create more efficiency on the back end, being able to order the right products at the right time as early as possible to hopefully reduce cycle time, reduce touch time. Have you seen any benefit in the back end to these more kind of beefy estimates on the front end?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we go back about time, and it's having the time to write the non-drive estimates, but what it also gave us is a little bit more time for the drivables. So one of the procedures that came about, being able to have that time, is we started doing what's called a triage. So which is the first phase of what we did. And now we're going into the second phase with the app, which I'll explain a little later. But essentially what it is before a customer comes in to drop off their vehicle, we take an hour and a half and we disassemble the vehicle and we take a look at everything that car needs, if it's drivable, and then we can put it on the schedule. And once that car comes in, then we have all of the tools we need to fix it. Right. So it all comes from additional time that we had not dealing with those tow-ins to adding a little bit more time on everything.
Makes total sense. And on a related note, you said that, this tool has helped your people essentially make more money because you're making more money. As
Yeah.
best you can, quantify where that additional margin or revenue or however you're making more money kind of came into play.
Yeah, well, it's no secret that your profitability is at the estimate. Everybody knows that, right? So if you have an accurate estimate and that car goes through the shop accurately and your length of rental is down and your touch time is up, then your throughput's going to be a little bit higher, right? So with the same amount of people, you're going to be able to put through a little bit more cars with more profitable estimates. It's one thing we realized as we set up the review desk and we set up these procedures is we were leaving a lot on the table simply because of no documentation. So we would do what they call working for free, right? And it's very true. And as soon as we were able to, streamline these processes and start documenting things correctly, it's not about charging more. It's just about charging what you're supposed to charge rather than not charging it at all. Right.
Right on.
That's what the conversation always leads to. So, more throughput, a little bit quicker on the repair side, and more profitable estimates. Obviously your sales and profit go up by itself.
Yep, hugely impactful, and it's not rocket science. It's not reinventing the wheel. Now, anytime you're investing in something within the shop, whether that's equipment or in this case, technology, there has to be an ROI equation calculated, right? There's a cost
Yeah.
plus, potentially, I would imagine, training time versus the additional margin gained or additional money gained. How do you view the ROI for this tool specifically?
So I measure it a lot by I'm a really big financial guy. So when it comes to my income statements, when it comes to my financial reports, looking at the GP, like those are really big things that I do on a monthly basis, and I like a hawk. So yes, there was a little bit of fear because the investment portion was a little bit bigger on the first go around, and of course the training and setting up, the review desk and all of that stuff. But what I started realizing really quick is the first month, the profitability, the GP went up by about 2%. Second month came by, we were at about 2 to 3. And as it kept going around the 6 or 7 month, we were already scaling up to 6 to 7. So you want to talk about profitability, once you see a 6 to 7% increase on your GP, you're laughing, you just want to invest more at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we take a look and we say, okay, we did phase 1. How can we make phase 2? So we started with a very simple investment. It was just 2 tablets in the office. That was it. I've already, as of November of last year, I've gone ahead and bought 55 tablets, and
Wow.
every single person in the shop is going to have a tablet moving forward. So when you talk about that investment piece, it definitely does become more comfortable when you see that there's good results at the end of it, right?
No doubt. And you were able to kind of try it a little bit, sample it, if you will, before rolling that out, which is going to give you an additional level of comfort that's going to be amazing. Now, additional margin grab. When you talk about getting paid by insurers, you often hear documentation, 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 or some iteration of if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Obviously, in going through this process and grabbing images and documenting more and more, have you seen a difference in how insurers treat some of these conversations around you guys getting paid?
Yeah, it's more it's not so much headbutting, and it's more like just simple conversations. Like our relationships with our insureds are amazing right now. You know what I mean? Like when you can take accountability for yourself and say, "Hey, listen, if I don't have this documented, don't pay me." They love that. You know what I mean? Like it's not this notion of it's, the body shops versus insurance. Like I might put a target on my back for some people, but I don't know. I don't believe in it. You know what I mean? We're all on the same team. At the other end of that screen is another human that just needs to make sure they're doing their job correctly, right? And they can't be doing you any favors. So if they go ahead and approve something that's not documented, then guess what? Their manager is going to come down on them, and it's going to be a whole nother issue for them. So we need to keep it honest, and the conversations have been very smooth because if we have the documentation, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, can you have a conversation with this image desk appraiser? Like we're having a little bit of a hard time, and 9 out of 10 times it goes through. And then when we don't have the documentation, we don't even call. We just, the review desk knows that they need to remove it. And we go back to the shop and say, hey, you could have made X amount of money, but instead you didn't,
Mm.
because you didn't have the right documentation for it.
Documentation, man, it's important. I love it. Anytime, whether it's M&A integration or new product rollout within a company or even a new company policy, there's often blowback, whether minor or major, from your team or resistance in adopting this new technology. You obviously had a couple leaders internally in your trial run, if you will, kind of champion the product and learn it, and people you could rely on to kind of sing the right song off the right song sheet to the rest of the team. How did the team's adoption of some of these new processes, procedures, and technologies go from your perspective?
Very good. You know what? I'm blessed with a really, really good team. Like there's no animosity, there's no pushback. I could honestly go up to my shops tomorrow and say we're all wearing clown shoes for work and everybody's going to do it. You know what I mean? Like we work as a team. There is no my way or the highway. I make sure everybody's involved in the processes. I explain everybody the why because the why is very important. You don't just want to hear an instruction and not know where you're going. And everybody's always on board. You know what I mean? Like our trouble isn't the pushback for implementation. Our trouble is the consistency, right? But that trouble will be present with us as well as any other person that tries to do a procedure. It's about not giving up.
There we go. Now, as this is being rolled out across the company, the investment's been made, but obviously you want to keep your finger on the pulse of, all right, are these processes and procedures dialed in as best as they can be, or certainly at least to a minimum level of acceptance from your perspective? Are there any dashboards or KPIs that you're monitoring, call it weekly or monthly, to make sure that, all right, things are working as they're intended? Or, hey, good news or bad news, we found some opportunity for improvement.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is one of the things we were doing up until the last quarter of last year was operations calls and shop audits, right? So weekly operations calls are important. That way you're measuring the cars that are being delivered, you're measuring the money that's coming in. So what that lets you do is, okay, if you see that, for example, your budget was $15,000 for Monday and they brought in 45, you got to give a call to the shop and say, hey guys, you had a killer day, but what happened? You know what I mean? Like if you're scheduling correctly, we shouldn't be tripling our sales for one day. Like that's just overloading production and the office, right? Um, People might be happy because it's like, yeah, they went over budget. I don't. If I make a budget, I don't really want you to be a hero and go over it. You know what I mean? Like the budget is what it is, and we're going to control the numbers that way. So my team knows that. So those are like a little bit of the checks and balances that we're doing. With the new tablet progress, what happened was we had to take all the tablets back and we had to set them up in hex nodes. So the setting up of all of that infrastructure has taken us about a month and a half to 2 months, and we're ready to roll out for next week. The problem is, with us removing those tablets, we immediately saw a decrease in our
Mhm.
or an increase in length of rental and a decrease in our touch time. So the proof is in the pudding, man. Like,
Wow.
it works.
Yeah,
Like, you
right
take those
there,
tablets
man.
away, right there, you see a decline, and then as soon as we put them back on, you're going to start seeing an incline again. So it's incredible.
That is crazy. What a cool, very clear, right in front of your eyes example on the
Yeah.
effectiveness of this technology, of your processes and procedures. All of this combined, obviously, you mentioned up front, you guys grew really quickly but methodically. You're opening up store number 5. How does all of this make you feel from a foundation perspective and your ability to keep growing? Does this give you more confidence to say, let's put the pedal down on growth?
Yeah, 100%. We have about 11 employees now in our management group that manages the stores along the way. We're going to have a vice president of operations coming up soon. So what that's going to allow me to do is just focus on the growth and have somebody focus on operations, right? So we're really starting to create a unit that is all moving in the same direction. Like, we all just want to grow. We all want to be a part of it. We all believe in what we're doing. So definitely the confidence is there.
I love it, man. Well, you've been extremely generous with your time. It's a fun story. You're a fun guy to talk to. I want to end us with kind of one broader question and then go ahead and get your contact information for anybody who wants to reach out, learn more about your business, you personally, the technology and the processes we're talking about. But that is very simply, before we get there, what's next for the CARSTAR Torcam Group?
Yeah, so that's part of phase two that we're talking about. And of course, we're in the middle of opening up the fifth location and trying to get that stuff done, but procedures can't stop, they don't stop. So that triage system that we have in place of calling the customer in, I really think we're going to get away from that. I think the AI is very smart now. We're at about 75 to 78% confidence, sometimes even higher, depending on the hit. So for those drivable cars, I feel pretty confident that we don't need to have the customer in anymore, and we're just going to start sending them out some links so that they can hopefully take their own pictures and run it, and we can just book them for the repair with the parts right away. That's kind of what the next step for the group is, and I think that's going to help us elevate the customer service, because nobody has time to go back to a shop twice or 3 times, right?
Or certainly not the patience. Absolutely. This customer
Yeah.
satisfaction, we talk about it all the time. Expectations are high. If you can meet them or exceed them, you're going to be in a great position to continue that growth, continue that great reputation. But man, it's been an absolute pleasure. Sebastian, for folks who want to follow along with your journey or get in touch with you, how can they do it?
I would say send me an email. I can put my email down. I'm always happy to reply to emails, and if somebody wants to set up a call or if they need anything, then we can go from there.
Awesome.
Um,
I'll be
but
sure to put that in the show notes, so we'll make that easy for folks.
yeah, absolutely.
Sebastian, man, an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to following along with your journey. And let's catch up soon after store number 5 is open, after these 55 tablets are rocking and rolling. Really appreciate you joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, man. It was a blast.
That is all for today's episode here on the Collision Vision. A big thanks to Sebastian Torres for a practical look at turning some real bottlenecks in intake and estimating into speed and trust, and for the candid playbook on preparing a team and a P&L for some rapid growth. If this sparked ideas for your shop or your business, start small. Standardize image sets, tighten repair planning at the door, and track the gains. These small incremental changes can lead to really meaningful impacts within your business. If you enjoyed today's episode, give us a follow at the Collision Vision wherever you enjoy your podcast. Leave a quick review and share it with your team or your friends across the industry. As always, on behalf of the Autobody News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.